Joseph Salerno, who will come up, give him some love. Amen. And he is offering himself to be our congressperson. And Mr. Salerno is going to be interviewed by a member of the community, Mr. John McQueen. Amen. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. This is yours, Mr. McQueen.
Good evening and welcome. My first question is going to be, tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be here today. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces. Nice to meet you as well. I'm a first-time candidate. I am a lifelong New Jersey resident. My wife and I raised our 4 children here. They're all New Jersey public school graduates, as are we. I was trained as a mechanical engineer. I spent the beginning part of my career making motors and gearboxes and valves, mostly for the aerospace industry. Thank you, sorry about that. It wasn't the most thrilling part if you missed it. But I got a chance to run my own business after a while. I've run several businesses, ranging from a machine shop that made stainless steel parts for military aircraft to software startups that use blockchain technology to serve the financial markets. And I, in my spare time, I coached the local Pop Warner Football League, and I'm kind of excited that Tim Walz has made that somehow a political credential nowadays. And I also went to law school at night. And I, for a brief moment, thought I wanted to be an attorney. Although I do have a license, I don't really intend to practice. But I wanted to finish what I started. So I studied exclusively constitutional history, civil rights, and served in the constitutional litigation clinic, which gave me kind of a lifelong avocation in constitutional history. And it's a big motivator for running for Congress nowadays.
If elected, what would you say would be, give me 3 of your greatest strengths in this position as congressman?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think if you look at how an engineer approaches problems, it's rarely ideological, right? Engineers have outcomes in mind, right? If we want to have a society that is more fair, or if we want to provide economic security to people, or if we want to bring economic opportunity to overlooked districts, let's have those outcomes in mind and then use core principles and then logic and reason. These are the tools of engineers and business people in order to affect outcomes. It's not about partisan bickering that tends to distract from useful outcomes. So I'd say that outlook would be my greatest strength, but having a passion for core American values in days like today, I think is also extraordinarily important, because we have people who are trying to change what the very definition of Americanism means. And to me, Americanism means that we're a government of laws, that we're not a government of kings or churches, and we're all equal under those laws. None of us are less than, even childless cat ladies, and we each possess the liberty to live life as we please, not as others think we ought to live, so long as we don't intrude on the rights of others to do the same. So keeping that perspective of core principles is vitally important, so that we don't trample on those freedoms while we set about trying to affect the outcomes we seek. So I think I only hit 2. Maybe I'm short and bald, so I'm not particularly vain. We'll round out.
Being a first-time candidate, what actually prompted you to run?
It's very much the rise of partisan acrimony, the divisiveness, leading all the way up to January 6th. I mean, it was staggering to see that happen. When the election was called for Biden on November 7th, 2020, I remember it because it's one of our daughter's birthdays. The relief in my wife and I was so palpable that we actually wept because I thought the crisis had passed. But then seeing the return of Trump and seeing our own elected representative live through, witness the violence of January 6th, have hours to consider it, and come back to the floor of the House and vote to overturn the election, that's started me on the journey on how are we going to move into a part of our life when we were for traveling on. But I mean, so many of us feel the same way, right? And that got us on the path, my wife and I, saying that we're going to begin the next phase of our lives will be in public service. And you know, it's funny. Bobby Kennedy Sr. would exhort people and say, and remind us that small groups of determined people throughout history have literally changed the world. And he reminded us that Archimedes said, give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I can move the earth. And it's that kind of inspiration that's got us looking around, well, what's the most impactful thing we can do? And running against Jefferson Van Drew, who has changed his position on every important issue that faces the people of South Jersey, it's really probably nothing more important that I could possibly imagine than unseating him.
What do you see as a primary goal as a congressman in this particular time that we're in?
I pause because I have two goals. There are goals that are policy goals. Like, I don't want people to think that I desire to get to Congress and then don't have an agenda for the people of South Jersey. So I definitely want to advocate for restoring Roe v. Wade and vindicating a woman's right to choose. And I want to advocate for making the essentials of life more affordable. I mean, we're all facing higher prices everywhere, but when we think about higher prices in healthcare, in housing, in childcare, and education, it's essential that we change the trajectory of those prices. And we absolutely have to bring new economic opportunity to districts like our own. There's too many people struggling, and we have to bring so much of the opportunity that the Biden administration has made available through the Infrastructure Act, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a $450 billion worth of stimulus that we need to work aggressively and collaboratively with the state, with higher education, with private industry to bring these kind of opportunities back to us. But the reason why I hesitated in answering, I think, as important as working to get votes in those areas, it's also about being a voice for bipartisan progress. You know, many, many years ago, President Kennedy, well, he was then still a senator, but he wrote Profiles in Courage. And he said that the traditional political patterns of liberal versus conservative, of management versus labor, of business versus consumer, were boxing us in. Back then, 70 years ago, he said, we could no longer tolerate such lazy political habits. He said that we have to have courage in politics, and not just courage to defend principle, but the courage to compromise. He said that we can resolve the clash of interests without conceding our ideals, because there's few issues where all of the truth and all of the right and all of the angels are on just one side. And it's beautiful rhetoric, but I think we want to try to put that into action. We need to come to a deliberative body like the House of Representatives with a mindset that says, there's potential that I am fallible and I will have respect for contrary opinion, and that we will try to make progress where we can, even if we can't get everything we wish. And we'll work with anyone who's willing to come to that body with a reciprocal attitude. And that, I think, it's so rare these days that it starts with a voice. So I'd love to bring that voice to Congress.
Young people tend not to vote You have 1 minute. Young people tend not to vote. What will you do in order to get younger people involved in the process and hopefully be elected later on in life?
Listen, I hope treating them with respect is a good start, right? Unlike the current congressman, I certainly intend to be back in district routinely, to go to various areas in the district and listen, right? I don't come to Congress with a belief that I have the answer to every problem. And now at 62 years old, I might have actually lost some perspective on what it's like to be in your second or third decade of life. So that's where I'd start.
We have 1 minute, so I think we have about a half a minute left. I'm going to give you that half a minute to do your closing statement.
Oh my. So I was so excited about the colloquy, I didn't think about a big close. But look, we really are at a crossroads. We are either going to embrace division and people who excite passions, right? This is the great threat to democracy, is when we have leaders who excite jealousy, stimulate animosity, and foment prejudice, because we're not using our reason when we are excited in those ways. And it's reason that will get us through the difficult problems that we face, right? We do need to beat inflation. We need to bring economic security to those in need. We have to restore reproductive rights, fight climate change, stop foreign aggression. We need to fix the border and control the deficit. And we got to bring hope of a prosperous, happy future for our young generations. That's what I hope we can accomplish.
Time's up. Thank you for coming.